So you've brought us some pretty interesting stuff this time around.
Yeah.
Seems like we're going deep on Doskvol. Specifically, all the gang activity there. We're talking character descriptions, maps, even a whole news report on some kind of fight. Makes you wonder what you're really after here.
Yeah.
It's got to be more than just what happened, right?
Right. You want to get into it, the why of it all, the motives, the power dynamics at play in a city like Doskvol. And who knows what else might be hiding under the surface. That's what makes these sources so fascinating. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we?
Yeah, let's start with what we know. Like, this war brewing, according to this Doskvol Daily Ledger article, puts us right in the thick of it.
It does, doesn't it? But remember, this clash at the docks, red sashes versus the lampblacks, injuries, even a possible death.
Right.
It's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, really, especially with rumors of stolen Black Lotus flying around.
Black Lotus, that sounds like some serious stuff. What's the deal with that?
It's potent, addictive, and in a city as desperate as Doskvol, whoever controls it. Well, they control a lot more than just the drug trade, if you get my meaning. To steal it, that's a power move, plain and simple. This isn't just some turf war. This is organized crime with very high stakes. We're talking influence, leverage, the whole package.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just like gangs fighting over street corners. But before we go any further, I gotta ask, you've got these maps and this mentioning something called the cataclysm. What exactly is Doskvol?
Well, dusk, it's gotta be more than just a cool aesthetic, right?
Doskvol isn't your average city. It's a place where the sun's a distant memory, a world trapped in perpetual twilight ever since the cataclysm. That event, it shattered reality as they knew it, broke the gates of death, unleashed restless spirits upon the land. Imagine it, living under a darkened sun, the constant threat of the spectral just beyond the city's defenses.
Ghosts. Now things are starting to make a little more sense. The city's got a reputation, and frankly, all this ghost stuff explains a lot. No wonder it's got such an intense vibe. It's unsettling, but it also defines Doskvol's character. This constant awareness of the spectral threats lurking beyond the city's lightning barriers influences everything. These massive electroplasmic defenses, fueled, grimly enough, by the blood of leviathans hunted in the Void Sea, are a stark reminder of the lengths they have to go to keep the city safe.
Leviathans. We're going full on into fantasy territory now.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting better and better. But okay, back to Doskvol itself. These maps you provided really highlight the differences between the districts. Talk about a tale of two cities.
Absolutely. Take Shadowy, for example. This working-class district, drowning in industry, shrouded in smoke. Then you've got Brightstone, opulent, well-lit streets, home to Doskvol's wealthy and influential. It's a stark contrast.
It's like the city itself is designed to highlight the differences between those who have and those who don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you could practically feel the resentment brewing in a place like Shadowy, especially when compared to the gleaming marble and fancy carriages of Brightstone.
And that's the thing, this disparity. It's not accidental. It's ingrained in the very fabric of Doskvol. The architecture, the lighting, even how people get around each district tells a story of social and economic division. And like any pressure cooker, it's only a matter of time before something gives.
And those factions we were talking about, they were a big part of that pressure, right? This whole red sash, lampblack thing, not to mention the other groups hinted at in this report. Tell us more about who the major players are in this urban drama.
Well, let's start with the red sashes. Don't let the name fool you. They're more than just thugs. They're organized, disciplined, with a history rooted in swordplay. But they've adapted to the times. Now they're heavily involved in drugs, mercenary work, you name it. Their leader, Mylera Klev, she's got a reputation. Cunning, ruthless, the whole 9 yards.
That's quite the resume. Makes you wonder what kind of person it takes to rise to power in a group like that. I mean, we're not talking about your average street toughs here.
It takes a certain type of person to thrive in Doskvol, wouldn't you say? Someone with ambition, maybe a little ruthlessness sprinkled in, someone who sees opportunity in the shadows.
Absolutely. And speaking of ambition, we've got this character description here, a young man named Erit. Noble background, but seems drawn to the city's underbelly. That thirst for power, that willingness to get his hands dirty, sounds like he'd fit right in with the red sashes, especially given their hold on Six Towers.
He does, doesn't he? Erit's got that drive, that hunger you often see in those who climb the ranks of groups like the Red Sashes. It's a city of faith, Doskvol, but also a city of secrets. And all of this, it makes you think about someone like Glimmers in the Dark, doesn't it? Communicating with ghosts. Imagine the information she could access, the mysteries she could unravel in this world. Someone like her would be invaluable in Doskvol.
An invaluable ally to have, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we can't lose sight of the human cost here. This clash, this struggle for power, it's more than just territory and smuggle goods, right?
Right.
Real people are caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely. Doskvol's got this. A lure, despite all the darkness. People are drawn to it seeking fortune, escape, even just a sense of belonging. But to control a city like this, especially with something as potent and sought after as Black Lotus, that's real influence. Leverage in a city full of desperate people.
It's a good reminder that we're talking about real lives here, not just names on a page or dots on a map. Take someone like Argyle, for example. He's just trying to make a living, establish his own little smuggling operation. He's no red sash, no lampblack enforcer. But his knowledge of the city, his ability to navigate its underbelly, that could be his greatest asset.
And on the other hand, you've got someone like Grimwald, battling addiction, haunted by the Deathlands. His knowledge of tinkering, his desperation for Black Lotus, it makes him incredibly vulnerable in this world. He could easily become a pawn in a much larger game, whether he realizes it or not.
A stark reminder that not everyone in Doskvol is playing to win. Some are just trying to survive another day.
And let's not forget about those whispers of ghostly activity you mentioned earlier, particularly around Crowsfoot. That area might hold a certain appeal for a group like the Lampblacks, don't you think?
Especially with all that talk about Black Lotus.
Yeah. Let's talk about embracing the darkness, right?
Yeah, even the name just screams grime and shadow. And it sounds like they've really sunk their claws into Doskvol's underbelly. It's interesting, the article mentions them controlling smuggling routes.
Yeah.
Which makes you think of places like the docks, yeah. All those dark corners, hidden passages, perfect for moving things discreetly.
Precisely. A hub like the docks gives them reach.
But you're right, the docks make sense. It's like each faction has found their niche, a district that reflects their dot style. And there are others out there too. We see hints of ghostly cults, secretive organizations like the Reconciled, even challenging the established religion, which honestly feels kind of intense considering what we saw of Brightstone.
The geography of Doskvol is like another character in this story. Each district has its own personality, its own rhythm that draws in a certain type of person, dictates a certain way of life. For example, the stark contrast between the industrial heart of Sharhallow and the opulent streets of Brightstone isn't just about aesthetics, it speaks to that deep socioeconomic divide we talked about earlier.
And the factions seem to have positioned themselves within this landscape almost strategically. The Red Sashes, with their emphasis on swordplay, they're yearning for a return to a more dot-structured time, they gravitate towards Six Towers. A district that, much like the Red Sashes themselves, seems to be clinging to a fading legacy of grandeur, wouldn't you say?
It's an interesting parallel, isn't it? This yearning for a bygone era. And in stark contrast, you have the Lampblacks, who seem most comfortable in the shadows, lurking in places like the docks or Crowsfoot, where the line between the city and the ghostly void is thin and permeable. They're products of the cataclysm, thriving in the darkness it left behind.
It's like each faction has become a physical embodiment of the district they inhabit, shaping and being shaped by its unique energy. But it's not just about the districts themselves, is it? We've got to talk about transportation. Doskvol is a city of waterways, bridges, winding alleyways. Whoever controls those arteries controls the flow of the city itself.
You're absolutely right. Think about the elegant gondolas of Silkshore or the bustling Gaddock rail station in Night Market. They're not just modes of transportation, they're lifelines. Veins and arteries that keep the heart of Doskvol pumping. And whoever controls that flow, whether it's goods, information, or even just whispers in the dark, well, they control the city's pulse. In Doskvol, knowledge might be power, but the ability to move unseen, to strike swiftly and vanish into the labyrinthine streets, is equally valuable.
It adds a whole other layer to this whole power struggle, doesn't it? Speaking of which, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, the unseen. This shadowy organization, they seem to have their fingers in everything. What's their game? What are they hoping to gain from all this chaos?
The unseen, right? They're like phantoms, always lurking just beyond the edge of our vision, but their influence, it's everywhere in Doskvol. You can't shake the feeling they're pulling strings, orchestrating events to suit their own ends.
Which begs the question, what exactly are those ends? They're a complete mystery, aren't they? Like trying to nail down smoke. We've got theories, some say they're after electroplasm, that stuff that literally keeps Doskvol alive. Others whisper about ancient artifacts, things lost since the cataclysm. Sounds like something straight out of one of Glimmer's in the Dark's ghost stories, honestly.
Doesn't it? This whole deep dive into Doskvol, it's like peeling back layers of an onion. You've got your secret societies, hidden agendas, power struggles spanning generations, and at the heart of it all, this pervasive sense of mystery and unease, it gets under your skin.
For sure. And while we're sitting here trying to piece it all together, there are real people caught in the middle of it all. making decisions with life or death consequences. What happens to a young guy like Eric, for instance? All that ambition. What if he goes too deep with the red sashes? Or Argyle, that aspiring smuggler. What if he stumbles onto something he shouldn't? Something that could bring the lamplights down on him.
The stakes couldn't be higher in Doskvol. It's a city that tests you, pushes you to your limits. Look at Grimwald. His story, it's a reminder of what this city can do to a person. Haunted by the Deathlands, lost in his addiction, consumed by paranoia. A bleak picture, honestly, but a powerful one.
Yeah. Easy to get swept up in the excitement of it all, the underworld, the power plays, but the consequences are very real. Doskvol might be a city of shadows, but even in the darkest corners, there's always a glimmer of hope, wouldn't you say? Places like the Weeping Lady, offering sanctuary to those forgotten by the city's elite, or the resilience of the people of Shar Hollow, finding ways to carve out a life for themselves against all odds.
You're right, those glimmers of hope, they're everywhere if you know where to look. Doskvol is a city of contrasts, that's for sure. Beauty and brutality, they coexist here in a way you don't often see, and maybe that's what makes it so captivating, so unpredictable.
Makes you wonder who will ultimately shape its destiny, doesn't it? Or maybe it's someone like Eret, driven by ambition, rising through the ranks. Or what about glimmers in the dark, listening to the whispers of the dead, uncovering secrets lost to time?
Or maybe it's none of them. Maybe it's someone completely unexpected. Young Argyle, perhaps, stumbling onto a truth that could bring the whole house of cards crumbling down.
Wow. Now that's a thought. We've barely scratched the surface, haven't we? We've got the factions, the motives, the web of power that connects them all. But one thing's for sure. Doskvol is a city in constant flux, always changing, always evolving. A city of whispers and shadows where fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye. It's captivating, terrifying, and utterly unforgettable.
Doskvol stays with you long after you've left its rain-slicked streets. And as those echoes of the cataclysm continue to reverberate through its alleys and canals, who knows what the future holds? One thing's for sure, it's a future you're now a part of, whether you realize it or not.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's been quite a ride.